In the shadows of wealth, a deaf boy's tears held a secret no one could hear. When a housekeeper's daughter signed the words no one bothered to learn, the mansion's perfect facade began to crumble. But no one imagined what would come next. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more heartbreaking stories that will leave you speechless. The sound of sobbing echoed across the immaculate lawn of the Blackwood estate, though, ironically, the one person making the sound couldn't hear it himself. 6-year-old Oliver Blackwood, the deaf son of billionaire tech mogul Richard Blackwood, had been crying under the garden table for nearly 2 hours. The staff had tried everything, offering toys, ice cream, even the iPad that usually calmed his tantrums. Nothing worked. "Someone call Mr. Blackwood." Mrs. Peterson, the head housekeeper, whispered urgently into her headset. "The boy won't stop, and the garden party starts in 3 hours." Richard Blackwood was in Tokyo closing a $3 billion merger. His new wife, Veronica, was upstairs, resting with a cold compress over her eyes and strict instructions not to be disturbed. The third, Mrs. Blackwood, had made it abundantly clear that her maternal instincts extended only to her Instagram posts, where she portrayed the perfect stepmother to her 7 million followers. "I've tried everything," the nanny, Miss Thompson, said with exasperation as she emerged from under the table. Her pristine uniform was now grass-stained, and her patience had worn thinner than the fancy imported napkins for tonight's event. "He won't even look at me." What nobody noticed was 8-year-old Lucy Davis watching from the kitchen entrance. Her mother, Eleanor, had worked as a cleaner at the Blackwood mansion for just 3 weeks. It was summer vacation, and with no one to watch Lucy, Elena had reluctantly brought her daughter to work, with strict instructions to remain invisible. "Have you tried asking him what's wrong?" Lucy suddenly spoke up, her voice small but clear in the garden chaos. Mrs. Peterson turned, surprised at the child's presence. "He's deaf, sweetie. He can't hear us." Lucy stepped forward, her worn sneakers a stark contrast to the manicured lawn. "I know, but did you ask him in his language?" The staff exchanged confused glances. Despite Oliver's condition, no one in the household had bothered to learn more than a few basic signs. His father hired speech therapists and specialists, but was rarely home to communicate with his son himself. Veronica had declared sign language too complicated after a single half-hearted lesson. Lucy walked slowly toward the garden table, kneeled down, and caught Oliver's eye. Then, to everyone's astonishment, her hands began to move in fluid, deliberate motions. "Where did she learn that?" Miss Thompson whispered. Eleanor, now standing nervously at the kitchen door, answered softly, "Her cousin is deaf. They're very close." Under the table, Oliver's sobbing gradually subsided as he watched Lucy's hands. His red-rimmed eyes widened with recognition, the first genuine human connection he'd had in this house for months. He hesitantly signed back, his small fingers trembling. Lucy's face suddenly changed. The innocence in her expression hardened into something else, concern, then alarm. "What's he saying?" Mrs. Peterson demanded. Lucy kept signing, confirming what Oliver had told her. She asked him questions, and with each response, her young face grew more troubled. Finally, she turned to the waiting staff. "He says—" Lucy paused, looking uncertain. "He says his stepmother hurt him." The garden fell silent. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. "That's ridiculous," Miss Thompson said automatically. "Mrs. Blackwood would never—" "He says she pinches him when no one's looking," Lucy continued, "and last night she—" Lucy struggled with the words. "She locked him in the dark closet because he knocked over her special perfume." Mrs. Peterson's hand flew to her mouth. "The poor lamb has an overactive imagination. Mrs. Blackwood is just strict about certain things." But Lucy wasn't finished. "He says she tells him his daddy doesn't want him anymore. That's why he's always away. And she says—" Lucy's voice dropped to a whisper, that soon Oliver will be sent away for good. But what happened next would change everything in the Blackwood mansion. It would ripple through their lives like a stone dropped in still water, reaching even the distant, distracted Richard Blackwood in his Tokyo penthouse. And it all began with a child's tears, another child's hands, and a secret finally told. You might wonder, how could no one have noticed the signs before? Sometimes the loudest cries are the ones we cannot hear, and sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones we should fear. But don't worry, justice has a way of finding its voice, even in the quietest corners of a mansion built on secrets. Absolutely not, Mrs. Peterson declared, her normally composed face now flushed with indignation. I've worked for the Blackwoods for 15 years. And I will not entertain such accusations from a child who barely knows the family. But Lucy stood her ground, her small hands still signing reassurances to Oliver. The boy had crawled out from under the table and now clutched Lucy's sleeve like a lifeline. I'm just telling you what he said, Lucy replied, with a wisdom beyond her 8 years. Isn't it weird that none of you can talk to him? That nobody ever learned how? Miss Thompson shifted uncomfortably. She'd requested sign language training twice in her employment contract, only to have it denied as unnecessary by the household manager. We should call Mr. Blackwood, suggested Jenkins, the groundskeeper, who had wandered over to investigate the commotion. And tell him what? Mrs. Peterson hissed. That his wife is being accused of... She lowered her voice, glancing at the children. Mistreating Oliver, based on sign language from a cleaning lady's daughter. He'll fire us all. Elena stepped forward, placing protective hands on Lucy's shoulders. My daughter doesn't lie, Mrs. Peterson. If Oliver is telling her these things, there's truth to it. Tension crackled in the air, like the approaching summer storm visible on the horizon. The staff was divided, those loyal to their paychecks and those troubled by what they'd just learned. While the adults argued, Lucy continued her silent conversation with Oliver. The boy's hands moved frantically, telling her more. About the nights he cried himself to sleep, about the times Veronica accidentally stepped on his favorite toys, about the way she smiled sweetly at him in public but transformed behind closed doors. He needs to show them, Lucy suddenly announced to the group. Show us what? Mrs. Peterson asked warily. Lucy signed to Oliver, who hesitated, then slowly rolled up his sleeve. A collective gasp rose from the staff. 5 distinct bruises, clearly fingerprints, marked his pale upper arm. That could be from anything, Miss Thompson said weakly, though her face had paled. Boys get bruises all the time. And Oliver signed again to Lucy, who translated, he says she did this yesterday when he wouldn't smile for her Instagram photo. The evidence was becoming harder to dismiss, and as the reality of the situation dawned on the household staff, a moral dilemma unfolded before them. Years of loyalty to the Blackwood name battled with the undeniable truth revealed by a child who couldn't speak, but whose body told the story his voice couldn't. What are we going to do? Whispered Elena, the newest and most vulnerable employee, who knew her job hung in the balance. Before anyone could answer, the garden doors swung open. Veronica Blackwood stepped out, a vision in white linen, her hangover concealed beneath oversized sunglasses and carefully applied makeup. Why is everyone congregating out here? She demanded, her voice honey-sweet, yet somehow brittle. And why is Oliver not dressed for the photo shoot? The magazine will be here in 2 hours. Oliver instantly shrank back, attempting to hide behind Lucy. The movement wasn't lost on Veronica, whose gaze narrowed on the unfamiliar child. Who is this? She asked, looking directly at Eleanor. Mrs. Peterson stepped in smoothly. This is Eleanor's daughter, Ma'am. She was just helping with Oliver. He was upset earlier. Veronica's perfect eyebrows arched above her sunglasses. Was he now? Well, that's no surprise. He's been absolutely impossible lately. She extended a manicured hand toward Oliver. Come along, darling. Mommy needs you looking perfect for our family feature. Oliver didn't move. Instead, he frantically signed to Lucy, his small hands shaking. What's he saying? Veronica asked, a dangerous edge creeping into her voice. Lucy hesitated, looking at her mother, then at Oliver's pleading eyes. The adults held their breath. Would this child dare to speak truth to power? He says he doesn't feel well, Lucy translated cautiously. His arm hurts. Veronica's smile didn't waver, but something cold flashed behind her designer sunglasses. Does it now? Well, Mommy has special medicine upstairs that will make it all better. She took a step closer. In that moment, Mrs. Peterson made a decision that would alter the course of all their lives. She stepped between Veronica and the children. Mrs. Blackwood, I think we need to call Mr. Blackwood. There are some concerns about Oliver's well-being. Ever wondered what happens when the facade of perfection begins to crack? When wealth and privilege can no longer hide the ugliness beneath? You might think you know where this story is heading, but trust me, what happened next in the garden that day would shock even the most seasoned staff of the Blackwood estate. Veronica Blackwood didn't miss a beat. Her crimson lips curved upward in a smile that never reached her eyes. Concerns? What kind of concerns could you possibly have, Mrs. Peterson? Oliver is perfectly well cared for. The bruises, ma'am, Jenkins said quietly. The old groundskeeper had watched 3 Blackwood wives come and go, but he'd never seen a child harmed before. Bruises? Veronica laughed, the sound like breaking glass. He's a little boy. They fall, they play rough, they get bruises. Surely you're not suggesting— He told us, Lucy interrupted, her young voice steady despite Veronica's intimidating presence. He told us what you do to him. Veronica's face transformed for just a split second. Rage flashed across her features before the mask of concern slipped back into place. She knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with Lucy. And you speak sign language, do you? Her voice dripped with condescension. How convenient that no one else here can verify what he supposedly told you. Lucy didn't flinch. My cousin Mia is deaf. We've signed since I was 4. Veronica stood abruptly, all pretense gone. This is absurd. I don't have to defend myself to the help. She turned to Mrs. Peterson. Call security and have them removed. The girl and her mother fired immediately. Eleanor stepped forward. If you fire us, we'll go straight to the police with what Oliver told us. The threat hung in the air like the distant thunder now rumbling over the estate. Veronica's perfectly composed exterior finally cracked. You think anyone would believe you over me? She hissed. I'm Veronica Blackwood. My husband owns half this town. You're nothing, less than nothing. While this confrontation unfolded, Oliver tugged urgently at Lucy's sleeve. He signed rapidly, his eyes wide with fear and determination. What's he saying now? Miss Thompson asked. Lucy watched Oliver's hands carefully. He says there's proof. In her phone, videos she takes when she's— Lucy hesitated, looking uncomfortable. When she's hurting him, she watches them later and laughs. Veronica's face drained of color. For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. That's a disgusting lie, she whispered, but her hand instinctively moved to the pocket where her phone rested. Mrs. Peterson had seen enough. I'm calling Mr. Blackwood. She pulled out her staff phone. Don't you dare! Veronica lunged for the phone, but Jenkins stepped in her way. I think that call needs to happen, Ma'am, he said firmly. What followed was chaos. Veronica screaming threats of lawsuits and ruination, security guards arriving, confused by the standoff. Oliver clinging to Lucy, while the adults around them argued about what to do next. Elena made a split-second decision. While everyone was distracted, she slipped closer to Veronica and, with the skill of someone who'd cleaned the fingerprints off countless phones, lifted the device from the woman's pocket. Lucy, she whispered, passing the phone to her daughter. "Ask Oliver if he knows the password." Lucy signed to Oliver, whose eyes widened at the sight of the phone. He nodded vigorously and carefully tapped in a 6-digit code. "It's her birthday," Lucy translated. "She makes him memorize it so he can unlock it for her when her nails are wet." The phone unlocked, revealing a home screen filled with social media notifications. Oliver's small fingers navigated to a hidden folder labeled simply O. Inside were dozens of videos. By the time security reached the garden, Lucy had already pressed play on the first video. The sound of Veronica's voice filled the air, followed by the sight of Oliver cowering in a dark closet, tears streaming down his face as Veronica taunted him from behind the camera. "Still think I'm making it up?" Lucy asked, holding the phone up for everyone to see. The garden fell silent, except for the damning evidence playing from the device. Veronica's carefully constructed world collapsed in an instant. "Give me that!" she screamed, lunging toward Lucy. But it was too late. Mrs. Peterson had seen enough. Her hand shaking, she dialed not Richard Blackwood, but 911. "Yes, hello," she said, her voice breaking. "We need police at the Blackwood estate immediately. We have evidence of child abuse. You might be thinking this is where justice prevails, where the wicked stepmother gets her comeuppance, but life rarely ties up so neatly, does it? And when billions of dollars and powerful reputations are at stake, justice can be flexible. The real question is, who would Richard Blackwood believe? His trophy wife or the staff he barely acknowledged? And what would happen to Oliver and Lucy, caught in the middle of an adult world of ambition, cruelty, and secrets? The next 24 hours at the Blackwood estate unfolded like a perfectly orchestrated disaster. Police cars with discreetly dimmed lights arrived through the service entrance, a courtesy to the Blackwood name that made Mrs. Peterson's blood boil. Detectives interviewed the staff one by one in the library, while social services spoke with Oliver in the sunroom, Lucy by his side as translator. "This is a PR nightmare," muttered Bernard Kelly, the family's crisis manager, who had arrived before the police, a fact that no one found surprising. "We need to contain this." Veronica had been sequestered in the East Wing with her attorney, a sharp-suited woman who defended celebrities through scandals that would make even this one seem tame. By midnight, Richard Blackwood's private jet had touched down. He arrived at the mansion with thunderous silence, his face an unreadable mask, as Kelly briefed him in the study. The staff huddled in the kitchen, a makeshift family united in worry and whispered speculations. "They'll bury it," Jenkins predicted grimly. "They always do." Elena held Lucy close. They hadn't been allowed to leave, ostensibly to assist with the investigation, but everyone knew it was to keep them from talking to the press. "What happens to Oliver?" Lucy asked, her young voice cutting through the adult conversations. No one had an answer. At precisely 1:07 a.m., Richard Blackwood entered the kitchen. The room fell silent as the billionaire, a man most of them saw only in passing or in newspaper photographs, stood awkwardly in the doorway. His face was haggard, his normally immaculate appearance rumpled from 20 hours of travel. "Where is my son?" he asked simply. "Asleep, sir," Miss Thompson answered. "The social worker said he could stay home tonight, but they'll be back tomorrow." Richard nodded, then did something that shocked everyone present. He pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down heavily among them. "Tell me everything," he said. "Not the sanitized version Kelly gave me, the truth." And so they did. Mrs. Peterson described finding Oliver under the table. Jenkins showed pictures he'd quietly taken of the bruises. Miss Thompson admitted she'd suspected something was wrong for weeks, but had been too afraid to speak up. Finally, Richard turned to Lucy, who sat wide-eyed beside her mother. "And you," he said, his voice softening. "You're the one who can speak with him." Lucy nodded solemnly. "What did my son tell you?" Lucy met his gaze without flinching. "He said He tried to tell you, many times, but you were never there. The words hit Richard like a physical blow. He closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the accusation. "He's right," he finally said. "I haven't been there." He looked around the kitchen at the staff, who knew his son better than he did. "I thought I was giving him everything by making sure my business succeeded. Instead, I gave him nothing that mattered." The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. "Sir," Mrs. Peterson finally spoke up. "What will happen now?" Richard straightened his shoulders. "Veronica will be gone by morning. The police have the evidence they need. My lawyers will handle the divorce." "And Oliver?" Elena asked softly. "Oliver needs stability, care, people who—" He faltered. "People who understand him, who can communicate with him." He looked directly at Lucy. "Would you be willing to teach me, to sign, I mean, so I can talk to my son?" Before Lucy could answer, the kitchen door swung open. Bernard Kelly stood there, his expression grim. "We have a problem," he announced. "Veronica's gone. She slipped past security, and she took something from the safe before she left." Richard was on his feet instantly. "What did she take?" Kelly's eyes darted around the room, clearly uncomfortable speaking in front of the staff. "It's fine," Richard snapped. "What did she take?" "Documents, sir, about Project Oracle." The color drained from Richard's face. "Lock down everything. Call Winston at the FBI. This is now a national security issue." He turned back to the bewildered staff. "I need to deal with this, but I promise you, all of you, Oliver comes first from now on." As he rushed from the room, the staff exchanged confused glances. "What's Project Oracle?" Lucy whispered to no one in particular. Mrs. Peterson shook her head. "Nothing good, if it's got Mr. Blackwood looking like that." What none of them realized was that Veronica's abuse of Oliver was merely the surface layer of a much darker conspiracy. The videos on her phone weren't just sadistic entertainment. They were insurance, leverage for something far more valuable. And now, with her cover blown, she had moved to Plan B. Have you ever wondered if evil has a purpose? If cruelty is sometimes just a smokescreen for something even worse? The bruises on Oliver's arms were visible, but the real danger remained hidden, for now. And the unlikely friendship between a billionaire's son and a housekeeper's daughter was about to pull them all into a conspiracy that reached far beyond the walls of the Blackwood estate. Dawn broke over the Blackwood estate with an eerie calm. The police had established a perimeter around the property, checking every vehicle that entered or left. Officers with dogs searched the extensive grounds, focusing on the wooded area that bordered the north side of the estate. Inside, Richard Blackwood had transformed the grand dining room into a command center. Men and women in dark suits came and went, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. None wore visible badges, but their authority was unmistakable. "What's happening?" Lucy asked, watching from the kitchen doorway as another black SUV pulled up the driveway. Mrs. Peterson gently pulled her away from the window. "Nothing for little girls to worry about," she said. But her tight expression betrayed her own concern. Lucy frowned. "I'm not little, and Oliver is my friend. I deserve to know." Elena, who had been up all night alternating between comforting her daughter and giving statements to various officials, sighed heavily. "Lucy, sometimes adults have complicated problems." "Like hurting children?" Lucy challenged. The adults exchanged uncomfortable glances, out of the mouths of babes, indeed. Upstairs, Oliver remained in his room with Miss Thompson and a kind-faced woman who had been introduced as Dr. Chen, a child psychologist who knew sign language. The boy had refused to speak to anyone except Lucy, but Dr. Chen was patient, slowly building trust. Mid-morning, the atmosphere in the mansion shifted abruptly. Raised voices came from the dining room, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the wall. Moments later, Richard Blackwood stormed into the kitchen, his face ashen. "Where's Oliver?" he demanded. "Still upstairs with the doctor," Mrs. Peterson replied. "Is everything all right, sir?" Richard ran a hand through his dishevelled hair. "No, nothing is all right." He looked at the staff gathered in the kitchen, then made a decision. "You all deserve to know what's happening. You're part of this now, whether I like it or not." He sat at the kitchen table, gesturing for everyone to join him. "Veronica isn't just my wife. Was my wife," he corrected himself bitterly. "She's also an operative." "A spy?" Jenkins asked incredulously. Richard nodded grimly. "I met her 3 years ago at a tech conference in Geneva. She was charming, beautiful, interested in my work. I was." He paused. "Lonely. My second divorce had just finalized. Oliver was struggling. She seemed perfect." "Too perfect," Elena murmured. "Exactly." Richard's eyes met hers with surprise and respect. "Too perfect, but I didn't see it then." "Who does she work for?" Mrs. Peterson asked. "We believe a consortium of foreign interests targeting American tech innovations. My company, BlackNet, has been developing a quantum encryption system that could revolutionize cybersecurity. Project Oracle." "And she wanted to steal it?" Jenkins asked. Richard shook his head. "Not steal. Sabotage. The documents she took contained critical flaws, deliberately engineered weaknesses that would allow backdoor access to any system using our encryption." The implications hung heavy in the air. "But what does this have to do with hurting Oliver?" Lucy asked, her young voice cutting through the tension. Richard turned to her, his expression softening with pain. "Control. Leverage. They knew my weakness, my son. Veronica's assignment was to establish dominance over Oliver, document his mistreatment, and use it to blackmail me if necessary." That's monstrous," Elena whispered. Richard nodded, his face haggard with guilt and rage. "We now believe she's been transmitting information all along. The abuse videos were just insurance. If I ever discovered what she was doing, she could threaten to release evidence of my son being mistreated under my roof. The scandal would destroy me publicly and cripple BlackNet's government contracts." Lucy stood up suddenly. "Oliver tried to tell you," she said accusingly. "He ran away from her twice. He broke her special phone once. He was trying to protect you, not himself." Richard stared at the 8-year-old, stunned by her insight. "What do you mean?" Lucy's hands moved instinctively as she spoke, signing from habit. "He told me last night. He saw her in your office once, copying files. When she caught him watching, that's when she started hurting him. She told him if he ever told anyone, she would hurt you too." The billionaire's face crumpled. His son, his 6-year-old son, whom he'd neglected for empire building, had been silently fighting to protect him all along. Before Richard could respond, his security chief burst into the kitchen. "Sir, we've got a location. Facial recognition picked her up at Baltimore Airport." Richard stood immediately. "I'll be right there." He turned back to the staff. "I need to go, but I need someone to stay with Oliver, someone he trusts." All eyes turned to Lucy. Eleanor stepped forward protectively. "My daughter has done enough. She's just a child herself." "Mom," Lucy interrupted, "Oliver needs me. I'm the only one who can talk to him." "Actually," came a new voice from the doorway. Dr. Chen stood there, a tablet in her hands. "Oliver has something he wants to show all of you, especially you, Mr. Blackwood." She turned the tablet around. On the screen was a video, footage from Oliver's bedroom security camera from 3 nights earlier. It showed Veronica entering his room late at night, sitting on his bed, and having what appeared to be a lengthy conversation. "But Oliver's deaf," Miss Thompson said, confused. "How are they talking?" Dr. Chen smiled sadly. "Watch her hands." Every person in the kitchen froze as they realized what they were seeing. Veronica was signing fluently to Oliver, had been able to all along. "She knew sign language," Lucy whispered. "She pretended not to, but she did." "There's more," Dr. Chen said quietly, fast-forwarding the video. "This is the important part." They watched as Veronica showed Oliver something on her phone, a different phone than her regular one. She pointed to the screen, then made a series of threatening gestures. Oliver nodded fearfully. Dr. Chen paused the video. Oliver says she showed him pictures of a building and told him it was where his father's company makes special computers. Then she said if he ever told anyone their secret, she would make the building explode with all the people inside. Richard's face went deathly pale. "Blacknet's Quantum Lab. We have 63 researchers there." He turned to his security chief. "Call Langley. Now. Full evacuation protocol." As chaos erupted around them, Lucy slipped away from the adults and made her way upstairs. She found Oliver sitting on his bed, knees pulled up to his chest. She signed to him. "You did the right thing." His small hands replied, "I'm scared." Lucy sat beside him. "Me too." Oliver looked at her, then signed something that would change both their lives forever. "I saw more than they know. I know where she's really going." Would you believe that everything that happened so far, the abuse, the espionage, the threats, was just the beginning? That the real danger was something no one, not even Richard Blackwood, with all his resources, had anticipated. Sometimes the most important clues come from those we underestimate the most. And sometimes saving the day requires the courage of children who refuse to be silenced. "What do you mean you know where she's really going?" Lucy signed, her eyes wide with concern. Oliver glanced nervously at his bedroom door before sliding off the bed. He padded across the plush carpet to his closet, the same closet where Veronica had locked him as punishment. With small, determined hands, he pushed aside designer clothes that still had price tags attached, revealing a vent in the wall. Lucy watched, puzzled, as Oliver unscrewed the vent cover with practiced ease. From inside, he withdrew a battered tin box, the kind that might once have held cookies or Christmas ornaments. "My secret place," he signed, "where I hide things from her." Oliver opened the box carefully. Inside was a peculiar collection, a miniature toy car, a smooth river stone, a folded paper airplane, and most surprisingly, a sleek black phone. Not a child's toy, but an expensive smartphone. "Is that hers?" Lucy gasped. Oliver nodded. "Her spy phone," he signed. "I took it 3 days ago when she was in the shower. She's been looking for it everywhere." Lucy stared in astonishment. "Does your dad know?" Oliver shook his head vigorously. "Too dangerous. She said she'd hurt him if I told." With the innocent dexterity of a digital native child, Oliver unlocked the phone. Unlike Veronica's personal device with its beauty apps and social media, this one contained only encrypted messaging apps and several folders labeled with codes. "Look," Oliver signed, opening a map application. A red pin marked a location in what appeared to be a remote area. "She talks about this place. She's going here to meet the bad people." Lucy peered at the screen. "We need to tell your dad," she signed. "This is too big for us." But Oliver's face crumpled in fear. What if they're watching? What if they hurt him? His hands trembled as he signed. "She said they have people everywhere, even here." The weight of the situation, far too heavy for children's shoulders, settled between them. Before Lucy could respond, footsteps approached the bedroom. Oliver quickly stashed the phone back in his tin box and shoved it into the vent, replacing the cover just as Dr. Chen entered the room. "Everything okay in here?" she asked gently. Lucy nodded, exchanging a silent look with Oliver. Their secret bound them together now, a secret that could potentially save lives or put them all in greater danger. Downstairs, the Blackwood mansion had transformed into something resembling a military operation. FBI agents swept the house for surveillance devices, while cybersecurity experts combed through the estate's networks for digital backdoors. Richard Blackwood stood in his study, staring at a secure laptop displaying the evacuation of the quantum lab. 63 researchers, brilliant minds working on technology that could change the world, filing out of the building in an orderly panic, unaware of the true nature of the threat. "Sir," his security chief approached, "the lab is clear, but we found this." He handed Richard a tablet displaying thermal imaging of the facility's basement. "There's definitely something there that shouldn't be." Richard's jaw tightened. "Explosives. EOD team is assessing now, but it looks that way. If she'd triggered it." The implication hung in the air. Hundreds of lives and billions in research, gone in an instant. "Any word on Baltimore?" Richard asked, his voice tight. "She boarded a private charter. We're tracking it now." Mrs. Peterson appeared at the study door, her usual composure visibly strained. "Mr. Blackwood, there's someone here to see you. Says he's from the State Department." Before Richard could respond, a tall man with silver hair and a grave expression entered the room. "Actually, it's Defense Intelligence Agency," he corrected, extending his hand. "James Holloway. We need to talk about your wife, Mr. Blackwood, or rather, about who she really works for." As the adults pieced together the elaborate web of deception that had ensnared the Blackwood family, upstairs in Oliver's bedroom, two children sat cross-legged on the floor, planning their own countermeasures against forces they barely understood. "We need a code," Lucy signed, "in case we need to talk about the secret when others are watching." Oliver's face lit up. Problem-solving was his refuge in a world where communication was always a challenge. He thought for a moment, then signed, "Butterflies. When we say butterflies, we mean the secret phone." Lucy smiled. "Perfect. And if we need to warn each other about danger, we can talk about rainbows." Their childish code established, they pinky swore to protect each other and the secret they now shared. Ever wonder what courage really looks like? Sometimes it's not a hero charging into battle, but a 6-year-old boy who's been silenced his whole life, finally finding a way to speak truth. Sometimes it's an 8-year-old girl choosing to stand beside him when she could easily walk away. As Lucy and Oliver formed their innocent alliance, neither realized they had just become the most unlikely and possibly most effective counterintelligence team in America. And downstairs, as Richard Blackwood learned the true extent of the threat against his company and his country, the question burning in everyone's mind was, who was Veronica Blackwood really? And what would she do next, now that her cover was blown? "Her real name is Natalia Petrova," Holloway explained, placing a file on Richard's desk. Inside were surveillance photos of Veronica, no Natalia, with various men in different countries. Former Russian intelligence, now working as an independent contractor for the highest bidder. "And Mr. Blackwood, the bidders for your technology are very high indeed." Richard stared at the photos in disbelief. The woman smiling beside him at charity galas and tech conferences looked like a stranger now. "How did she get past our security screenings? I have a team that investigates everyone who comes into my life." Holloway's expression remained impassive. "She's been groomed for deep cover operations since she was 16. Her documented history as Veronica Winters is flawless. Harvard education, Silicon Valley startup experience, even an authentic-looking family in Connecticut." "The family I met," Richard whispered, remembering the Thanksgiving they'd spent with Veronica's parents, just months after they began dating. "Actors," Holloway confirmed. "Very good ones. Retired agents themselves." "And I fell for all of it," Richard said bitterly. "The perfect tech-savvy wife who understood my work, who seemed to care about Oliver despite his challenges." "Don't be too hard on yourself," Holloway offered. "She's fooled trained counterintelligence officers before. That's why we've been watching her, and by extension you, for the past 18 months. Richard's head snapped up. "You knew? You knew she was spying on me and you did nothing?" We didn't know her endgame until recently. We had to let the operation play out to identify her network. Holloway, at least, had the decency to look uncomfortable. We never anticipated she would physically harm your son. That crossed a line. A line? Richard's voice rose dangerously. My son was tortured as collateral damage in your intelligence games. Before Holloway could respond, an agent burst into the study. Sir, we've got movement. The charter flight has landed at a private airstrip in West Virginia. Satellite imaging shows vehicles waiting. High-value targets confirmed on site. Holloway straightened immediately. How soon can we have a team there? 30 minutes by helicopter. Make it 20, Holloway ordered, then turned back to Richard. I need to go. We'll continue this discussion when I return. I'm coming with you, Richard said, standing. Absolutely not. This is a federal operation now. Richard's eyes narrowed. That woman invaded my life, endangered my company, and abused my son. I'm coming, or I'm calling every reporter in my contact list with the story of how the DIA used a child as bait. The two men stared at each other, a silent battle of wills. Fine, Holloway finally conceded, but you stay in the command vehicle. This isn't a revenge mission, Mr. Blackwood. Lie. As the men prepared to leave, neither was aware of the small figure that had crept down the hall to listen at the study door. Lucy, sent downstairs to get water, had overheard enough to understand that Oliver's secret phone might be crucial. She raced back upstairs, finding Oliver anxiously waiting. Butterflies, she signed urgently. They're going after her, but they don't know about the butterflies. Oliver's eyes widened in understanding. He retrieved the hidden phone, unlocking it quickly to show Lucy the map again. They're going to the wrong place, Lucy realized, comparing what she'd overheard with what Oliver was showing her. The phone shows she's going somewhere else. We have to tell them, Oliver signed, his small face determined. But how? They won't believe kids, and your dad is already leaving. Oliver thought for a moment, then his face lit up. He grabbed Lucy's hand and pulled her toward the window that overlooked the front drive. Below, they could see Richard and Holloway preparing to board a helicopter on the lawn. Too late, Lucy signed frantically, but Oliver was already moving, grabbing his tablet from the bedside table. With flying fingers, he typed out a message and hit send, just as the helicopter rotors began to spin. Downstairs, Richard's phone buzzed in his pocket. He almost ignored it, but something made him check. The message from Oliver's communication app stopped him in his tracks. Daddy, wrong place. I have her secret phone. She's going to the mountain, not the airfield. Richard froze, then turned to Holloway, showing him the message. My son says we're heading to the wrong location. Holloway scoffed. With all due respect, Mr. Blackwood, we're acting on confirmed intelligence. Your son is 6 years old and traumatized. He's also the only person who's been watching her every move for months, Richard countered. He texted back rapidly, Oliver, how do you know? The reply came seconds later. I took her spy phone when she was in shower. Has secret map, different from what they think. Richard looked up at Holloway, challenge in his eyes. Are you really willing to bet an entire operation on the assumption that my son doesn't know what he's talking about? Have you ever noticed how adults often dismiss children's observations? How the smallest, most vulnerable members of society see things the rest of us miss, simply because no one expects them to be watching? In the game of espionage and counterintelligence, perhaps the greatest advantage isn't sophisticated technology or trained operatives, but the innocent eyes that notice everything and the ears that listen when no one thinks they're paying attention. As Richard Blackwood faced down a seasoned intelligence officer with nothing but his son's text message as evidence, the fate of Project Oracle, and possibly national security, hung in the balance. 2 minutes, Holloway said grudgingly, stepping away from the helicopter. That's all I can spare to humor this theory. Richard didn't waste a second, sprinting back into the mansion and taking the stairs 2 at a time. He burst into Oliver's room, startling both children. "The phone," he signed and spoke simultaneously, kneeling before his son. "Show me." Oliver hesitated for just a moment before retrieving his secret box. He handed the sleek black device to his father with solemn ceremony. Richard examined it quickly, a specialized secure phone with military-grade encryption. His eyes met his son's, a mixture of pride and regret washing over his face. "How did you get this?" he asked, his hands forming the signs awkwardly, but with determination. Oliver's hands flew in response. "She was careless, thought I wouldn't understand, thought I was stupid." The last word was signed with such vehemence that Richard flinched. How many people in his son's life, himself included, had underestimated the boy because of his inability to hear? "You're the smartest person in this house," Richard signed back carefully, each movement deliberate. "Show me what you found." Oliver navigated to the map application, pointing to coordinates in the Appalachian Mountains, nearly 100 miles from where intelligence believed Veronica was heading. "There's a facility there," Lucy explained, watching Oliver's signs. "He says she talks about it when she thinks he can't understand. Something about the final delivery." Richard's phone buzzed with an impatient text from Holloway. With a quick decision, he photographed the map on Veronica's phone and sent it to the agent. Seconds later, Holloway himself appeared in the doorway, face tight with controlled urgency. "Where did this come from?" he demanded. Richard gestured to Oliver. "My son, the one you all thought was just a pawn in this game." Holloway stared at Oliver with new respect, then spoke into his comm device. "Reroute to secondary coordinates. And get me satellite imagery of Sector 7 Alpha in the Appalachians, focused on these coordinates." He showed his tablet to Richard. "There's nothing registered at this location. No buildings, no infrastructure." "That's the point," Richard replied. "It's the perfect cover." Holloway made a swift decision. "We're moving out now. Mr. Blackwood, you're still with me?" He turned to the children. "You two have done something extraordinary today. Now I need you to stay here, where it's safe. Can you do that?" Both children nodded solemnly, though Lucy's eyes darted to Oliver's with a silent message that the adults missed. As Richard prepared to leave, he knelt before Oliver once more. "I've missed so much," he signed, his movements becoming more natural with practice. "When this is over, things will be different. I promise." Oliver's response was both heartbreaking and hopeful. "I believe you this time." Within minutes, the helicopter lifted off, carrying Richard and the tactical team toward the mysterious mountain facility. The mansion settled into an uneasy quiet, with FBI agents securing the perimeter and staff trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. In Oliver's room, however, a new plan was forming. "They still don't have all the information," Lucy signed urgently. "I heard the agent talking. They don't know what's inside the building." "But we do," Oliver replied, his face serious beyond his years. He navigated further into the stolen phone, pulling up architectural plans labeled Phoenix Site. Lucy studied the diagrams with growing alarm. "This isn't just a meeting place, it looks like a lab. And why are there quarters for so many people?" Oliver nodded grimly. "Not just a handoff. She's been building something there, something big." His hands paused, then added, "Something that needs Project Oracle to work." The realization hit them simultaneously. Veronica hadn't simply been stealing information. She'd been preparing a parallel operation, something that required the quantum encryption technology to function. "We need to warn them," Lucy signed. Oliver looked at her intently. "Rainbow," he signed, their code for danger. "They're watching us now." "The agents, they won't let us contact Dad." Lucy bit her lip, thinking rapidly. Then her eyes lit up. Miss Thompson always leaves her phone charging in the bathroom when she takes a shower, and she's watching us today." A conspiratorial smile spread across Oliver's face. Within 30 minutes, their plan was in motion. Miss Thompson, exhausted from the day's events, gratefully accepted Oliver's suggestion of a hot shower, while the children watched an educational program on his tablet. The moment the bathroom door closed and the shower started running, Lucy slipped in, grabbed the nanny's phone, and brought it back to Oliver, who quickly sent the architectural plans to his father with a simple message. Not just meeting, building something big. Be careful. Miles away, as the helicopter approached the mountain coordinates, Richard received the message. He showed it to Holloway, whose face darkened as he examined the plans. "This isn't an exchange site," the agent said grimly. "It's a black site research facility. And if I'm reading these specs correctly, they're building a quantum computer designed to break any encryption except Oracle." He looked at Richard with new urgency. "Your wife wasn't just stealing your technology. She was building the only machine in the world that would be immune to it while able to crack everyone else's security." "She's not my wife," Richard said coldly, "and we're going to shut this down now." As the helicopter began its descent into a clearing 2 miles from the hidden facility, neither man was aware that the mission had been compromised from within. One of Holloway's trusted team members silently sent a warning text, alerting the facility to the incoming raid. Inside the mountain complex, Veronica Blackwood, Natalia Petrova, received the warning with a cold smile. "Activate Protocol Omega," she instructed her team, "and prepare the welcome committee. My husband is coming to visit." And did you think this was simply about corporate espionage? About a woman manipulating her way into a wealthy man's life? The truth, as Oliver had discovered through patient observation and Lucy through loyal friendship, was far more sinister. The question now wasn't just whether Richard would capture Veronica, it was whether he would survive the encounter at all. And back at the mansion, 2 children who had already proven themselves braver and smarter than anyone expected were about to face a danger of their own. The mountain facility, camouflaged so effectively that it appeared to be nothing more than a natural rock formation from above, hummed with frantic activity. Veronica moved through the underground complex with deadly efficiency, issuing orders in Russian and Mandarin as technicians hurriedly transferred data and dismantled equipment. "We have 17 minutes before they breach the perimeter," she announced to her lead scientist, a thin man with nervous hands and brilliant eyes. "Is the prototype ready for transport?" "Yes, but we need at least 30 minutes to safely disconnect it from cooling systems," he protested. Veronica's smile was chilling. "You have 15. After that, this facility won't exist, with or without the prototype." Meanwhile, Holloway's tactical team moved through the forest, guided by satellite imagery and Oliver's stolen intelligence. Richard, despite promises to stay in the command vehicle, had convinced Holloway to let him join the forward team. His intimate knowledge of Project Oracle made him invaluable for identifying critical technologies. "Remember," Holloway briefed the team, "primary objective is to secure any quantum computing hardware and Oracle-related materials. Secondary objective is to apprehend Petrova and her accomplices, lethal force authorized only as last resort." Richard checked the lightweight body armor they'd given him, an uncharacteristic determination hardening his usually corporate demeanor. "And if Veronica Natalia resists?" Holloway's expression was unreadable. "Then she's made her choice." Back at the Blackwood mansion, a new crisis was unfolding. Lucy had just returned Miss Thompson's phone to the bathroom when alarms suddenly blared throughout the house. "Security breach in Sector 4, announced an automated voice. "All personnel implement lockdown protocol." Miss Thompson burst from the bathroom in her robe, hair still dripping. "Under the bed," she ordered the children. "Now!" Before they could move, the bedroom door crashed open. 3 armed men in tactical gear stormed in, faces concealed behind balaclavas. "Where's the phone?" the leader demanded, his accent thick and Eastern European. Miss Thompson stepped protectively in front of the children. "What phone? Who are you people?" The man struck her with his weapon, sending her crumpling to the floor. "Not asking twice," he snarled, turning to the children. "Where is Natalia's phone?" Oliver stood frozen, but Lucy stepped forward, her young face defiant. "We don't know what you're talking about," she said, subtly signing to Oliver behind her back. "Rainbow, maximum rainbow." Oliver understood immediately. Their worst-case scenario had arrived. His eyes darted to the vent where his tin box was hidden, then back to the intruders. The leader noticed the exchange. "The boy knows," he said to his companions. "Search the room. Tear it apart if necessary." As 2 men began ransacking the bedroom, the leader grabbed Lucy's arm. "You will tell us what you know, or your friend will suffer." Lucy's eyes flashed with a courage far beyond her 8 years. "He can't hear you, stupid. He's deaf." The man's eyes narrowed dangerously. "But he can feel pain, no? Children heal quickly from broken fingers." Before he could make good on his threat, an unexpected sound interrupted. Laughter. Oliver was laughing silently, his small shoulders shaking with apparent mirth. The leader stared in confusion. "What is funny, boy?" Oliver signed rapidly to Lucy, his face alight with mischievous triumph. Lucy translated, choosing her words carefully. "He says you're too late. The phone already told us everything, and we already told his dad." The leader's expression darkened. He spoke rapidly in Russian to his companions, who immediately abandoned their search of the room. "New plan," he announced, grabbing both children. "You are coming with us. Insurance in case your father needs motivation to cooperate." Miss Thompson stirred on the floor, blood trickling from her temple. "No," she moaned. "Leave them alone." The leader ignored her, speaking into his radio. "Package secured. Moving to extraction point Alpha." As they were hustled down the service stairs, Lucy and Oliver exchanged terrified glances. The situation had escalated beyond anything they had imagined. Yet even in their fear, a silent communication passed between them, a plan forming without words. Oliver suddenly went limp, dropping to the floor with a convincing display of terror and confusion. While the men focused on picking him up, Lucy took her chance. She broke free and ran, not away from danger but toward it, directly to the kitchen where she knew the staff would be gathered. "They're taking Oliver!" She screamed as she burst through the door. "Bad men with guns!" The kitchen erupted in chaos. Jenkins grabbed a carving knife, Mrs. Peterson hit a panic button hidden under the counter, and Elena pulled her daughter behind her protectively. Upstairs, FBI agents who had been securing other parts of the mansion responded to the alarm, converging on the service stairs where the kidnappers now found themselves trapped between federal agents above and enraged household staff below. In the mountain facility, Richard and Holloway's team had reached the outer perimeter undetected. As they prepared to breach the main entrance, Richard's phone vibrated with an emergency alert from the mansion's security system. "Something's wrong at home," he whispered urgently to Holloway. The agent checked his own device. "Hostage situation," he confirmed grimly. "They're after the children." Richard's face drained of color. "This was a diversion. She wanted me away from the house." Holloway's expression hardened. "Or she's hedging her bets. If she can't complete her operation here, she'll use your son as leverage." A terrible understanding dawned on Richard. "We have to go back." "Negative," Holloway replied firmly. "The team at the mansion is fully capable. Our window of opportunity here is closing. We proceed as planned." The clash between fatherhood and national security played across Richard's features. For so many years he had chosen his work over his son. Not today. "I'm going back," he said, removing his tactical gear. My son needs me more than your operation does." Holloway blocked his path. "If we don't secure this facility now, the threat doesn't end. Think bigger than one family, Blackwood." Richard's response was cold and precise. "My family is all that matters. Either get me transport back to the mansion, or I'll find my own way." As the two men stared each other down, an explosion rocked the mountain behind them. The facility's self-destruct sequence had begun. Did you ever wonder what a parent would sacrifice for their child? What choice would you make if forced to decide between saving many or saving the one you love? As Richard Blackwood finally confronted this impossible choice, miles away, his son and an 8-year-old girl were fighting their own battle, outnumbered, outgunned, but refusing to surrender. The next few minutes would determine not just their fates, but perhaps the course of global cybersecurity for generations to come. In the confined space of the service stairs, the kidnappers realized their tactical disadvantage. FBI agents descended from above, while kitchen staff blocked the exit below, armed with improvised weapons and righteous fury. "Back off, or the boy dies," the leader shouted, holding Oliver with one arm while aiming his weapon with the other. Oliver, however, had been preparing for this moment. In the silent world he inhabited, observation was everything, and he had observed Veronica's self-defense instructor many times through the gym windows. With calculated precision, he went completely limp, becoming dead weight in his captor's grip. The momentary shift in balance was all that was needed. As the leader struggled to maintain his hold, Jenkins charged from below, his decades of military service before becoming a groundskeeper evident in his swift, decisive movements. The knife he wielded wasn't meant for combat, but his skill made it deadly effective. The leader howled as the blade sliced across his arm, his weapon clattering down the stairs. In the confusion, Oliver broke free, scrambling toward the FBI agents who had now closed the distance. The other kidnappers, seeing their plan disintegrate, attempted a desperate last stand. Gunfire erupted in the narrow stairwell. Mrs. Peterson pulled Lucy to the floor, shielding the child with her body. Elena screamed her daughter's name, struggling against an agent who held her back from the danger. When the echoes of gunshots finally faded, an eerie silence fell over the Blackwood mansion. 2 kidnappers lay wounded and subdued. The third, the leader, was dead, Jenkins' kitchen knife still embedded in his chest after a final desperate struggle. Oliver sat on the bottom step, seemingly calm despite the chaos, though his hands trembled slightly. Lucy broke free from Mrs. Peterson's protective embrace and ran to him, engulfing him in a fierce hug that needed no words in any language. "You were so brave," she signed when she finally pulled back. Oliver's response was simple. "So were you." In the mountain facility, the situation had devolved into chaos. The self-destruct sequence had triggered a cascading failure throughout the complex. Research staff fled toward emergency exits, while Veronica's security team engaged Holloway's forces in a running gunfight through smoke-filled corridors. Richard, who had refused to leave despite Holloway's orders, navigated the labyrinthine facility with single-minded purpose. His target wasn't the quantum hardware or the stolen Oracle data. It was Veronica herself. He found her in the central laboratory, supervising the hasty dismantling of a prototype that glowed with the distinct blue light of quantum cooling systems. "Hello, Richard," she said without turning, somehow sensing his presence. "You're earlier than expected. Your son must have been more resourceful than I gave him credit for." "It's over, Natalia," Richard replied, using her real name deliberately. "The facility is surrounded. Your team at the mansion has been neutralized. There's nowhere left to run." She turned then, and the cold calculation in her eyes made him realize he had never known her at all. "There's always somewhere to run, Richard. That's the first rule of our business. She gestured to the prototype. "And with this, I'll have every government in the world offering me sanctuary." "What is it?" Richard asked, buying time as he heard Holloway's team approaching down the corridor. "The future," she replied simply. "A quantum system capable of breaking any encryption except Oracle. Whoever controls both technologies controls the digital world." A smile played at her lips. "We could have done it together, you know. You never appreciated the true value of what you created." "At what cost?" Richard demanded. "Torturing my son? Betraying my trust?" Something flickered in her eyes, not remorse, but perhaps regret at tactical opportunities lost. Oliver was collateral damage, nothing personal. "It was very personal to him," Richard said, his voice deadly quiet. "And to me." The laboratory door burst open as Holloway led a tactical team into the room. "Natalia Petrova, you're under arrest for espionage, child endangerment, and about 24 other charges we'll sort out later." Veronica's hand moved swiftly to a concealed pocket. Agents tensed, weapons raised, but what she withdrew wasn't a gun, it was a small remote detonator. "I'm afraid I can't accept that invitation," she said calmly. "This facility is rigged with enough explosives to bring the entire mountain down. Unless you want to be buried under thousands of tons of rock, I suggest you let me leave with my prototype." A tense standoff ensued, with Holloway signaling his team to hold position, while Richard took a step closer to the woman he had once loved. "You won't do it," he said softly. "You'd die too." Veronica's smile was chilling. "You never really knew me at all, did you, Richard?" What happened next occurred so quickly that later reports would contain conflicting accounts. Veronica's thumb moved toward the detonator button just as Richard lunged forward. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. The prototype crashed to the floor, its delicate quantum components shattering. And in the midst of it all, a single bullet found its mark. Richard knelt beside Veronica as her life ebbed away, red blossoming across her white lab coat. Her final words, whispered only to him, would haunt him for years to come. "He has your eyes, you know. I almost regretted it sometimes." Then she was gone, taking her network of secrets with her. The helicopter ride back to the Blackwood mansion was conducted in exhausted silence. Holloway's team had secured what remained of the facility, but the true victory had occurred far from the mountain hideaway, in a service stairwell where 2 children and a loyal staff had defeated trained operatives through courage and quick thinking. As the helicopter descended onto the mansion's lawn, Richard saw a small figure standing at Oliver's bedroom window. His son's face, normally so guarded, broke into a smile of pure joy at the sight of his father's return. 3 hours later, after debriefings and medical examinations, Richard sat in the kitchen with Oliver, Lucy, and Eleanor, Mrs. Peterson had prepared hot chocolate, comfort food for a household that had experienced far too much excitement for one day. "What happens now?" Lucy asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Richard looked at his son, then at the little girl who had changed everything by simply being able to communicate with him. He signed as he spoke, a new habit he was determined to maintain. "Now we heal," he said simply, "and we stay together." Oliver's hands moved in response. Lucy too, and her mom. Richard glanced at Elena, who had protected the children with the same fierce devotion she had shown her daughter. A connection had formed between them during the crisis, something that might, with time, become more. "If they want to," he signed back. "This house could use more family." Eleanor smiled, reaching for her daughter's hand. "We'd like that, wouldn't we, Lucy?" Lucy nodded enthusiastically, then signed to Oliver. "See? I told you there would be a happy ending." Oliver's response brought tears to Richard's eyes. Not ending. Beginning. 1 month later, the Blackwood mansion had transformed. The cold, museum-like atmosphere had given way to a warm, lived-in home. Security remained tight, but laughter echoed through rooms that had known only silence before. Richard had taken a leave of absence from Blacknet to focus on what truly mattered, building a relationship with his son and creating a new kind of family with Eleanor, Lucy, and the loyal staff who had become so much more than employees. Project Oracle continued under new leadership with enhanced security and ethical guidelines. The attempted theft had ultimately strengthened rather than weakened the technology's potential to protect digital privacy worldwide. And every evening, in the garden where it all began, Lucy taught sign language classes to the entire household, with Oliver proudly serving as her assistant instructor. The little boy, who had once hidden under tables, now stood tall, surrounded by people who not only heard him, but truly listened. Have you ever wondered if heroes come in all sizes? If the smallest voices might sometimes speak the most important truths? In the end, it wasn't billion-dollar technology or government agents that saved the day. It was two children who refused to be silenced, who built a bridge of understanding when adults had failed. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all, that sometimes, to solve our biggest problems, we need only listen to our smallest voices. For in the silence of Oliver's world and the wisdom of Lucy's heart, they had found something more powerful than any quantum encryption, the unbreakable code of friendship, courage, and love.